quote, "And everyone who competes for the prize is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a perishable crown, but us for an imperishable crown." 1 Corinthians 9:25, written in approximately 99 AD by St. Paul. So, if we can stop bickering, why don't you all come with me and tell me your ideas?
And you see, Professor,
We have the Here's, yeah.
Alrighty, welcome to the final installment race. And as you can see from the video, it looks like our castaways are finally about to get off the island as we have followed these lovely young people journey, as we followed people in their journey, being confused and being ineffective in all their attempts. And now we see that because they followed the principles that we've been talking about here, that hopefully they're about to get off the island. For those who have been following along this series, what we've been looking at in this amazing race is how to live an effective life. And what we've been using as kind of our framework, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the 7 habits of highly effective people. And what we agreed in the very beginning, okay, now we're about to hit the finish line here, is that most of us, our life controls us, not us controls our life. And it's the circumstances and the situations and the problems or the whatever that happens in life that controls me. My time controls me, not me controls my time, and so on and so forth. So what we've been looking at is how to take back control of our life and to find that success and effectiveness that we talked about. What we agreed in the beginning is the only way we're going to make a serious long-term change is long-term changes don't happen overnight. They don't happen in like a kaboom kind of a way. They happen when we are committed to planting seeds. And the only thing that I've been talking to you about in this series is seeds. We've been looking at seeds that we plant, and if we're faithful and consistent, persistent, in planting these seeds, then one day it's going to bring forth fruit sometime down the road. So we looked at 6 kinds of seeds. Actually, we looked at 5 kinds of seeds. We looked at the first 3 is at the bottom of the triangle there. They're the foundation. And they are the taking control of my life at an individual level. And then once I've taken control of my life, then I can begin to take control of the way I relate to others. And that's the top 3. And we talked about think, win, win. Last week we talked about seek first to understand. The 6th habit, which actually we're not going to talk about, is, as the guy mentioned in the video, which is that fancy business word or whatever word, synergy, or synergize, which basically means that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Did I say that right? Yeah. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And that's what the word synergy means. And it's something that is not something I can teach you. It's something that you take the principles that we talked about, you go outside and you practice it in your day-to-day life, and you will discover that the whole is always going to be greater than the sum of the parts. And it's biblical too, right? The Bible teaches us that 2 are better than 1. The Bible teaches us that it is not good for man to be alone. The Bible, God, when He created a man, didn't create him by himself, but He created him to be part of relationship. And even God Himself is not in 3 individuals, but 3 are 1 and 1 are 3. Okay? And the Trinity is greater than 3 individuals. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So I'm not going to talk about that today. What I am going to talk about today is the final seed in our amazing race right here. And this is the one that I'm most passionate about. So you have to forgive me if I get excited and get a little sweaty today. Because this is the one that, in my personal opinion, all the stuff that we talked about up to this point is great, and it's nice, and you can do it, and you could be back exactly where you are next week if you don't learn the 7th habit. Because the 7th habit is what takes the short-term changes. All of us have made short-term changes. All of us have gotten our act together in a short term. Whether it was because of a crisis that happened. Look at it like, the example that I've been using throughout is like eating, okay, and dieting and exercising. All of us have exercised for a period. All of us have eaten healthy for a period, but the majority of us, that period is very short, okay, and it dies out. What is it that takes short-term change and makes it long-term? That's our topic for today. But in order to teach this lesson, I'm going to invite my two friends from last week. Give a big hand to Peter and Samantha. And they're going to teach us the lesson with another short skit.
Hey, Peter.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Just trying to cut down my neighbor's apple tree.
Why are you cutting down your neighbor's apple tree?
Because I'm going to take the tree, I'm actually replant it on my lawn, and I'm going to take his apples. See, once it's on my property legally, there's nothing he can do about it.
Okay, not only is that illegal, but Peter, it doesn't look like you're making a lot of progress cutting down that tree.
It's not a bigger saw.
A bigger saw?
Right.
Okay. Did you switch saws?
No, I didn't switch saws. I mean, I've been drilling for a good 5 minutes, and I'm exhausted.
I hate to state the obvious, but did you try sharpening the saw?
You're really not the brightest crayon in the box, are you? You can't sharpen metal, Samantha. It causes sparks. And when sparks occur, there's these greenhouse gases, and explosions happen. And the environment and the trees and everything, it's just, you can't do it. Now, can I cut the tree?
Okay. Not to be persistent or anything, but really if you sharpen the saw, I think it would work.
You can't sharpen metal.
Okay.
It doesn't exist.
All right. Okay. You know what? I can't go to the doctor anymore. I can't talk to you. It's like no one wants to listen to me.
How are your eyes, by the way?
They're fine.
Okay.
Give him a big hand. Give him a big hand. Thank you, guys. Okay. So the lesson that we learned from that little skit. Have you ever been too busy cutting down a tree to sharpen the saw? Have you ever been too busy driving to stop to get gas? The constant struggle that all of us have in life is not necessarily just making changes, but sustaining them. And the only way to sustain change from a short term to a long term is to take time to stop sawing the thing, and like my man Peter should have done, is sharpen the saw. What happens to most of us in life when we don't sharpen the saw? Let's go back to my man Peter up here. And he's up here, and he is trying to cut down this apple tree for some reason. And he's trying, and it's not going very smooth. So instead of sharpening the saw, what does he do? He tries harder. And that doesn't produce much more effect, so what does he do? Tries harder, and tries harder, and tries harder. And the more he tries harder, the more he ends up frustrated. I put this much effort and got no results. Okay, so I'm going to put this much effort. And now I still get no results? Frustrated, stressed out, burnt out. This is what happens in life when we don't take time to, as the expression goes, sharpen the saw. We become discouraged. Habit number 7 that I'm going to talk about here today is good news for all of you. Because it's one that talks about investing in the most important asset in the world, which is you. Our goal in this amazing race is not to start a race, but to finish a race. St. Paul said it, 2 Timothy 4:7. This was 2 Timothy was one of his final epistles, okay, written at the very end of his life, and chapter 4 is the final chapter. So it's near the very end of his life, and look what he says. He says, I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. Not I have started the race, not I have begun the race, not I was in the lead in the race. You don't get any prizes for starting and being out in front. The prize is for he who finishes. And if you want to finish this race, then you must learn the seventh habit of keeping the saw sharp so that it can be effective. Here's our principle for today, and it's the most important principle in the whole wide world. If I want to finish this race, I must, underline must like 100 times, learn to renew myself daily. As you walked in today, you got these nifty little water bottles. No charge. Gift to you. The point of having these water bottles is to remember this principle. Life is a marathon, it's not a sprint. If it's a sprint, you don't see in the 100-yard dash people, with the cups of water. But when it's a Boston Marathon, and it's going to be a while, you have those people on the side of the road with the cups of water. And you'd be a fool if you said no to all the water because you don't want to take the 2 seconds that it takes to grab it to replenish yourself. You're not going to make it in the marathon. The guy who, if you're an Indy 500 or NASCAR, who says, I don't have time to stop for gas, I gotta go. Not going to work that way. And the same thing in the race of life. You keep the bottle, no charge, but you remember the principle that we need to learn how to replenish. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16, look what St. Paul says. He says, therefore we do not lose heart, even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. St. Paul understood this principle, and we're going to understand it here. Remember a few weeks ago I told you about the quadrants, important and urgent, Q1, Q2, 3, and 4. And I said about how the goal of life is to get to the second, doing things that are important but not urgent. There's nothing that fits that category more than this topic of replenishing the self and renewing the self and making sure that my saw is sharp. And making sure that before I head out into the task of chopping down trees, that I make sure that it's sharp. And what we're going to see today is that this topic, sharpening the saw, renewing oneself, is important. It's not urgent today, but if you neglect it, it'll be urgent tomorrow. And we want to deal with it before it gets to the point of being urgent. I'll give you an example. If you're an intelligent person, like myself, okay, you've heard of something called the Strategic Air Command. Raise your hand if you've heard what that is. Very good. Very good. Just the intelligent people like myself. Okay, very good. Just us upper echelon people, okay? And since, of course, I know what it is by heart, but let me just look at my notes. What the Strategic Air Command is something, so basically in this country, there's planes, okay, that are always defending us. 24 hours a day, there's planes. Y'all seen Top Gun, right? Okay? So, similar to the concept of Top Gun, okay? No, I'm just joking. So there's planes that are all the time flying around to defend us and watch out for the bad guys. If there's a plane that's flying 24 hours a day, what's the common question that begs to be asked? Yeah, how does it get gas? No, these government people are smarter than me and you. They came up with a way to fill the tank of gas while the thing is flying. It's called like mid-flight refueling, okay? Off the top of my head, okay? It's called mid-flight refueling, which means as this guy's flying around, only God knows how they do it, but some way, another plane goes up there and, shoots a laser of some sort or a hose, and somehow it catches gas and it fills it up. We need to learn this art. We need to learn that art. It's very important that every now and then we get away vacation. It's very important that every now and then we take a spiritual retreat. But hey, let's be practical. You're not going to do that every day. You're not going to do that every day. You're not going to go to Hawaii every morning that you're tired. Say, honey, I'm tired, let's go to Hawaii. It doesn't work that way. Anytime that you're down spiritually, you're not going to go to the monastery for a week. It doesn't work. We need to learn how to refuel in mid-flight. Not forever. We need to eventually land and do stuff, but we need to learn how to refuel in the middle of our day, in the middle of our week, in the middle of the busy season, whatever that may be for you in your job or in your family or whatever. We need to learn how to keep running the race, but get the swig of water while I'm running. Four areas that we need to learn this self-renewal or this self-replenishment. In the Gospel of St. Luke, chapter 2, verse 52, speaking about Christ in his childhood. And it gives this description of Christ as he was a young man, okay, and as he was a youngster and grew into a young man. And it says the following: And Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and with men. Gives us the 4 areas, a blueprint of the 4 areas we need to have this self-renewal. In wisdom, up here. In stature, my body. In favor with God, spiritual. Favor with men, relational. We're going to break down every one of those 4 and see very practically the seeds that we need to plant in order to be replenished or renewed in these areas. Let's start with the physical and move our way up. The first area of self-renewal is physical self-renewal. This is easy. I need to take care of my body. The idea of taking care of your body may not seem very spiritual. Eating right, exercising, sleeping, taking care of yourself may not seem very spiritual. But you better believe that it is 100% a spiritual duty to take care of this body. St. Paul says, 1 Timothy 4:8, he's saying exercise is not the most important thing in the world. However, it does profit a little. Godliness is profitable for all things, but bodily exercise does profit a little. Why? 1 Corinthians 6:19. Do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have from God, and you are not your own? You were bought at a price, therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's. Anyone who says it's unspiritual to take care of your body doesn't need to read in the Bible. Because the Bible says you must glorify God in your body. Why? Because it's God's. It's not yours. And some of us need to be ashamed of the way we're treating God's body. It is a shameful thing, the way we abuse God's body. Look, here we are in a church. There's a very nice gym here. Is the gym the most important thing in the church? No. Absolutely not. Sanctuary, altar. We don't need a gym to have liturgy. We don't need a gym to have a church. The church is the group of believers. We don't need it. It's not the most important thing. However, I wouldn't be very happy with you if you started spray painting graffiti on the walls. I wouldn't be very happy if you threw your trash all over the gym. Is the gym the most important? No. But it's still important that we take care of it. Because the gym is part of the house of God. And your body is part, something that belongs to God, and we must be faithful stewards. In addition, now selfishly, it is to your advantage to take care of your body. It's your advantage to eat right, to get enough sleep. It's your advantage to make sure that you're exercising. Why? Because when you do those things, life is smoother. Your saw is sharper. Stress goes down. Blood flows a little bit. Have more energy. Alert. Trust me, it will change your mood and your stress level if you can begin taking care of yourself physically. I'll speak from my personal example. There's times in my life where I'm committed to exercise and times in my life where I'm not. The times I'm not, 100% I see a difference. Whether it's my moods, whether it's my energy. I'll tell you another thing that's very important, my discipline. Because exercise is a great way to discipline yourself, and if you can't keep that discipline, it's going to be very difficult for you to keep a lot of other disciplines which are much more important. So, what we need to do is make time for exercise. Every one of these points we need is practical, easy, something. Remember, the context of our discussion is taking control of my life. What we need to do, come up with and I stress on the word, simple exercise plan. I'm not talking about running a marathon. I'm not talking about training for a 5-miler. I'm talking about taking a walk. I'm talking about hitting a bike every now and then. I'm talking about the weather is beautiful these days. It's only nice here for 2 weeks of the year. It's perfect. Get outside, smell some fresh air, go do something, play a sport. Oftentimes, exercise, we say, I don't have time. I don't have time to exercise. Man, that's a funny excuse. When you think about there's 168 hours every week. 168. If you were to take 30 minutes 4 times a week, that's how much? That's 2. That's 2 out of 168. It doesn't seem that 2 out of 168 is such a huge burden, a huge cost, that we can't fit it in. Again, I'm not saying run a mile. I'm not saying run 10 miles. I'm saying to start something simple. Do some push-ups. Do some sit-ups. Pull out that buns of steel tape that's been collecting dust. Just do something 20, 30 minutes a day. My goal is not like the thing on the internet, lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks. That's not my goal. That's different. My goal is to take care of myself and be a healthy person. Trust me. You're consistent with exercise. It will do things for you that you didn't realize. And it'll help you in spiritual ways more than you know. And then let's say you are consistent with exercise. Then you go the next step, which is out of all of our leagues. But let's say you want to be a champ. You start watching what you eat. And you start coming up with an eating plan. I know that's way out there, okay? And I'd be a hypocrite to tell you if I do it. But what I'm saying is, we can aim that at some point in time, okay, we put down the ho-ho and maybe pick up a carrot or something like that. Okay? Somewhere down the road. My point is, my goal is not to be buff and in shape and anything like that. My goal is to be healthy and to have a sharp saw when I wake up in the morning. Physical renewal number 1. After he grew in stature, said he also grew in wisdom. Intellectual. Most people think, graduate school, brain shuts off. Hey, your brain is very important, and you're going to need it down the road. So the fact that you're going to need it, the brain is just like anything else in life. If you don't use it, it gets destroyed. What's it called? Atrophy, right? If you don't use it, it kind of shrivels up and dies. St. Paul, at the end of his life, taught us a very important principle. That even though I'm going to die, even though I'm about to be killed, and he's writing this passage, 2 Timothy chapter 4, from a prison, all by himself, lonely, miserable, no excuse to live. What does he say to Timothy, his disciple? When you come to me, bring the cloak that I left with Carpus at Troas when you come, and the books, especially the parchments. What's our action item for intellectual renewal? Make time for reading. What exercises this bad boy? Is when I read and I write. Those are the two, like reading and writing are the best ways. Okay? Again, I'll use myself as an example. When I used to grow leaps and bounds in my spiritual life, there was one thing that was clearly different, like noticeably different from back then to now. Okay, now, like this, but back then it was leaps and bounds. And one major difference was that I used to spend at least half hour a day reading. Because I wasn't married. I didn't have friends. So, I just come home, eat, go to my room and read. And I used to read like a book a week. That's why when people ask me, what book should I read? Man, don't ask me what book you should read. I, in my house, and again, I'm bad at it now, but I used to be good, have a pile of books. Every time I see a book that I like I'm a cheap person, but the one area I'm not cheap, actually the 2 areas I'm not cheap, is books and shoes are the 2 areas I'm not cheap, okay? Sneakers, okay? Those are the 2 areas. I gotta be honest. Okay, but books, you see a book that you like, buy it. Someone tells you a great book, buy it. Even someone just came to me, and that person knows. They came to me over there in the coffee, says, I just read this great book. I said, send me the link on Amazon. I want to buy it. Because I want a stack of books so that when I'm ready to read, I pull one out and I read it. And if it stinks, I put it down and I pick up another one. I don't want to spend a year fasting and praying about which is the right book to read, and then I get myself with that book and I take a year of fasting and praying to finish the book. Man, just read. Read anything. Spiritual books, read spiritual books. Books about church, read about church history. Read about saints, just read. Read. That's how you feel yourself. Again, I don't have time for reading. That's what most people is going to say. If you say, I don't have time for reading, then I say, you don't have time to be a parent, to be a servant, to be a role model in life. Abu Nushay said this in his sermon maybe a week, 2, 3, something like that ago. He said, every leader must be a reader. Every leader must be a reader. Or said another way, every leader must be a learner. Because the person who stops learning is the person who's worthless. Again, I read a nice quote. The person who doesn't read is of no better value than the person who can't read. And that's the way many of us live. I'm taking control of my life. I'm saying, no, it is important to read. I'm going to make a goal of one book every 2 months. That's easy. One book every 2 months. The goal I want to eventually get to is one a month. But let's start easy. I'm going to set aside time, not necessarily in my day, but in my week. Okay, because not every day, maybe your Tuesdays and Thursdays are packed, but maybe on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, you can have a half hour of reading. Okay? So again, it's not, I talked about this before, we plan in weeks, not in days. You have time for reading. And you make sure that you have time to make sure that this guy is growing, and that you're learning new things, and this guy's not dying along the rest of the way. Third aspect of renewal that we need, relational. It says he grew in favor with God and favor with men. So it's that favor with men that I'm talking about right now. Romans chapter 12, verse 5. So we being many are one body in Christ and individually members of one another. You know what that verse says? It says that you do not exist in a vacuum and you cannot exist in a vacuum. You exist in me and I exist in you. You're part of me and I'm part of you, whether you like it or don't like it. Every single person, I want everyone to look at the person next to them and tell them, you need me. Go ahead, tell them right now. Tell them you need me. Okay? Very good. You need me. Very good. Okay? Okay, that's enough. Okay? I should have thought about the boy-girl thing beforehand. That's okay. Y'all know what I'm talking about. We need each other. We do need each other, and my life is incomplete without you, and your life is incomplete without me. So if we want to be sharp, we need to make sure that we have time for regular, relational renewal. The Lone Ranger thing doesn't work in Christianity. Christianity is anti-Lone Ranger. Now with that said, I'm not speaking about being extroverted or introverted. Being social or antisocial. That's not what I'm talking about. You can be introverted. You can be antisocial. You can be a miserable person as far as like social and not whatever. But you still need relationships. And you can still live in this community that God intended for us to live in. Why does God care so much that we live in relationship with one another? You know why? You know why God cares so much that we invest in relationships? Because God knows that you are going to need it one day. Because you cannot, let me stress on that, you cannot survive this marathon without a team. Again, you're running a race. You need a team. You need the guys with the water around you to fill you up. If you're driving in the NASCAR thing, you need the pit crew. You need people there for you, and you're not going to make it. Because this life, this amazing race that we're talking about, it ain't easy. If it was easy, this would have been a very boring series. And there would have been nothing to talk about. But it's difficult, and we struggle with it. And we usually fail at it. That's why we need help. The Bible says in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 9 and 10, 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up. It is inevitable. No matter who you are, you're going to hit a point where you trip and you fall. Discouragement. Frustration. Ready to quit. Hopefully not, but could depression. It's inevitable. This life, there are not only pitfalls, there are enemies sticking their foot out to try to trip you. It's inevitable you're going to fall. Be smart. Get the team in place now. Don't wait to trip and fall. Say, okay, who can help me up from here? The whole world's passed you by. Just like those who live in Washington, D.C. I know we have a lot of people who just moved here, out of town, whatever, who live in Washington, D.C. Here's some advice for you before we head into the fall. Buy an umbrella today when it's sunny. Because the guy on the side of the street outside the metro sells them for $2 today. You wait till it's raining, you're going to pay an arm and a leg for it. Be prepared in advance. Invest. Like, this is the most Q2 activity you'll ever do. Quadrant 2, the important but not urgent. Invest in relationships so that when you fall, you got someone there to pick you up. How do I invest in relationships? Man, this one's easy. Anyone who's been here at St. Mark's, this is easy. This is a no-brainer. This is a natural plug. KFG. That's it. That you commit. Actually, I shouldn't have wrote sign up. I should have said commit to a Koinonia fellowship group. It's easy to sign up. Commit to a Koinonia fellowship group. Those who don't know what that is, those are the activity formerly known as small groups, okay, which are basically, as it sounds, a small group of people, of individuals, okay, who gets together on a weekly basis, not to tell secrets and to do secret handshakes and not to gossip, but to have fellowship with one another, the biblical fellowship that God designed for us to have. If you've never been part of a KFG, and you haven't because we just restarted them right now, okay, I encourage you very strongly to sign up, especially because we have a campaign coming up soon, which I'll talk about it at the end, so I don't want to mix two things. We're going to have a campaign coming up very soon, and every year we do like a campaign at this time, a church-wide campaign. And this particular one, if you're not in the KFG, you're going to miss 50% of the campaign. So let's make a commitment now. Not forever and ever and ever and ever. Let's make a commitment, an 8-week commitment, that each one of us, and I myself am the first one raising my hand, saying, I'm going to go sign up for a KFG, a Koinonia Fellowship group, not forever and ever, but for 8 weeks for this time of this campaign, which is going to begin in a few weeks. I'm going to sign up. I'm going to commit. I'm going to go to the meetings. I'm going to schedule time out of my busy, busy schedule. I'm going to make time for it because it's important, even though it's not urgent. And I need relationships around me, and you do as well. Why? Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24. Let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. Not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together. That's exactly what KFG, Koinonia Fellowship Groups, is all about. So we said Jesus increased in wisdom, intellectually, in stature, physically, in favor with men, which is relationally, and then the last component is the spiritual renewal. Let me ask you a question. Everyone has the exact same answer to this question. What is the first thing to go out of the schedule once I get busy? What's the first thing that gets crossed off the to-do list once I'm too busy and something's got to go? God. First thing in every one of our schedules. The first thing to go once I'm too busy, because God is patient. Like, if I need to talk to my wife and to my God. My wife is very patient, but not as patient as God. So I may go on that side of the coin. God's the first thing to go. The Bible's the first thing to go. Time in prayer is the first thing to go. When my week is so packed, and I have something that I just got to do, and I just need a chunk of time, hey, I'll be there next Sunday. Is every Sunday? It's Sunday. It's rare that we take a day off from work before we take a day off from church, right?
There's a very nice book that was written. Can't remember the author's name off the top of my head. I'm sure a lot of you read it. It's called Too Busy Not to Pray. Anyone read that book, Too Busy Not to Pray? Very nice book. It's the opposite of what we think. We think I'm too busy to pray. The guy said, "You're busy?" I said, "Yeah." "You're busy?" "Yeah." "You need to pray." "No, I'm really busy." "Oh, then you need to really pray." The concept makes sense. If I'm this busy, I need this much God, I need to pray this much. But if I'm this busy, I need this much God, I need to pray this much. We're backwards. The more busy, the less pray. This guy said, "I'm so busy today, I got to go back and pray some more." Nothing sharpens the saw and makes it razor sharp like time with God. Imagine my man over here cutting down the tree and trudging and trudging and trudging. Now imagine you give that boy like a laser slicer to That's what time with God does. It makes hard things easy. Things that I can't, and people that I can't, and commitments that I don't want, and all that stuff that drives me crazy, me want to kill someone. Time with God allows me to smile in the midst of it. It's like magic. Time with God sharpens the saw more than anything else. Let me rephrase that. Genuine time with God. Authentic, real time with God. Not just showing up in church on a Sunday and standing in the same pew. That doesn't count as sharpening the saw. Sincere time with God, where I make contact with the Almighty. Anytime I'm frustrated and I'm bent out of shape and I make contact with God, I promise you 100 out of 100 times never ends the same way it started. Never. Never do I go into real prayer. Real prayer. Not the routine, not the real prayer. Never do I go in and come out the same way I came. Ever. Ever. It can be the same thing with you. God knows we need spiritual renewal. That's why in the Old Testament, when the people knew nothing about nothing, and they were completely ignorant to how God worked, God said, "Look, I'm going to dumb it down here for you. I'm going to give you a top 10 list. I'm going to give you a top 10 list of things that you make sure you do and don't do. Because I know you only have 10 fingers on your hand, so therefore I'm just going to give you 10, and I'm just going to give you the 10 most important." And what was one of the ones on his top 10 list? There's a Sabbath day, a time where you need to replenish, a time where you need to take time out for yourself to connect with me. Don't mess that one up. The principle of the Sabbath is not a day. Like the Sabbath, the commandment, is not a day. It's not the letter. It's the spirit. And the spirit is that we need to make time for regular renewal. You break this commandment. Actually, I was even in the gospel that was read today. That you break, or the epistle. That you break any one of these, you might as well be breaking them all. Put that Sabbath, that spiritual renewal, on the same level as murder, adultery, stealing. Because that's how God put it. How do I recharge spiritually? Quiet time? Read my Bible? Go to church? Pray? Agbeya? Fast? Yes and no to all of those. Those are components, but the goal is not the activity. The goal is what's behind the activity. I would say the following. The action item we need to commit to is daily worship and quiet time. I could have just said quiet time, but that term is very overused. And some people tell me, yes, I do my quiet time all the time. I did it in the shower. I did it on the metro. My friend from Nebraska, we do a quiet time together. So I don't have any idea what you're talking about when you say that. Okay? I don't have any idea how you can do quiet together. I don't understand. Okay? But somehow you figured out a way to do it. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a time every day where I'm really quiet. I'm quiet here. I'm also quiet here. I'm quiet here. And I connect with God. I worship the Almighty. I pray. I may read. I listen. I may write. I may stand. I may kneel. I may sit. I may do jumping jacks. Whatever. I don't care what you do. The goal is to get to this point. And there is no one formula that works for everyone. What works for you may not work. And to be honest, what works for me today may not have worked for me last week. That's why we have to keep the end goal in mind, and we got to get to that point. And no matter what it takes to get to that point, we got to get there. And you can't be married to a outside routine. Okay? What we must be committed to is the inside principle of I must every day plug in to God to get recharged from Him. Psalm 37 verse 4. Great verse. Delight yourself also in the Lord, and He shall give you the desires of your heart. See the difference between delight yourself in the Lord and quiet time in the shower? You see the difference? Delight yourself in the Lord versus just checking off something on a list. That's what I'm trying to get to, is every day, for a few minutes at least, I delight myself in Him. I enjoy His presence. For those, we did a retreat a year ago about worship. The WOW retreat, the way of worship, is what I called living sacrifice time. It's all the same thing. It's just different words that you don't get. Like, I just want to use different words so you don't get stuck on a formula. A plus B plus C. A wise person gave a nice formula for how this renewal spiritual should take place. We should divert daily. We should withdraw weekly. We should abandon annually. What that means is that on a day-to-day basis, I'm not talking about hours a day. I'm talking about chunks of time, minutes, okay? Every single day. In addition to that, I do need like a more quantity of time, and maybe I plan that weekly. Maybe, like for example, since we talked about Sabbath, maybe Sunday, day of the Lord, okay, praying for football games. Maybe Sunday is a good day, okay, that you go home, you enjoy some nice lunch, you watch a nice football game, hopefully the Redskins win, okay? Then you spend some quality time with God, praising Him for the win. Or if they lose, you spend some quality time praying for next week's game. It may be Sunday is a good time that we schedule some time for some spiritual renewal. And then, of course, abandon annually. Once a year, we need a significant chunk of time. That's the retreat. That's the vacation time that we definitely need. But we need to build it that way. Divert daily, withdraw weekly, abandon annually. If you are too busy for that, then you know what? You are too busy. Period. If you're too busy for that, then you're too busy. And you got to make a change. Because there's nothing more important than this that we're talking about. Think about this question. When was the last time that you spent alone time with God? Significant, quality, delight yourself in the Lord. When was the last time that you did that? In the last 60 days in which you did